What happened with the foreigners? Are Terran 2-base all-ins unbeatable? And why does Canadian money look like it comes out of a game of Monopoly? All of these questions will be answered in today's episode of StarCraft Today.
StarCraft Today.
Your favorite StarCraft news show. An exciting week in the GSL as the only foreigner still left in the tournament played in Group B. And in the first match we immediately saw that foreigner start off, and Reiner started off strong, dominating Bunny on one of the best Terran maps in the entire pool, Waterfall, in a rather standard macro game. The second game, however, we saw Bunny switch gears immediately and opt for a 2-base timing attack. Reiner had a solid response, stopped droning early, skipping upgrades and rushing out pain speed, but despite all that got blasted in the first fight due to a hasty engagement. From there on out, Bunny played it out slowly, leapfrogging his tanks forward bit by bit to eventually pick up the victory on map number 2. In game 3, Bunny decided to go for the exact same build order as in game number 2, but had a different type of execution. Rather than trying to fight as soon as possible, Bunny decided to play the waiting game and give Reiner the decision to either drone up or to eventually try and break this powerful tank position just outside of his natural. Reiner went for the latter. The fight looked closer than in game number 1, but the result was fairly similar. Bunny with an army supply lead and Reiner on the back foot. Once again, Bunny played it out with patience, forcing Reiner to eventually tap out and sending the young Italian to the losers match. The second match of Group B had Dream take on DRG, and just like Bunny, it seemed like Dream was a true believer in the 2-base. DRG attempted to defend it while having 70 drones. Keyword in that sentence is attempt, as just like Reiner in the previous series, DRG was not strong enough to hold the push and GG'd out of game number 1. Never change a winning team is what Dream must have thought, as on Inside and Out he played another command center first into a 2-base all-in. Dream had a rocky first fight, but as DRG had a low drone count, the South Korean Terran was still in a playable position. And after taking a more successful second fight, Dream pulled ahead and the game started heading down a path that was walked a couple of times before already on the very same day. And indeed, a mere 2 minutes later, DRG tapped out, giving us a TVT in the winners match. And in the first game of that winners match between Dream and Bunny, we saw an aggressive push out of Bunny, pressuring Dream's starport, and after a quick rotation into the natural, the fluffy Terran managed to win the first game. The second game brought us more of the same. Bunny tried to siege his opponent's main base, but this time around Dream was ready for it and defended gracefully, allowing him a lead in supply, which he turned into a victory a couple of minutes later when he started attacking. The third and final game brought us another aggressive play out of Bunny. This time with a cheesy double starport opener, allowing him air control while also pushing back his opponent's tanks with an aggressive liberator. Dream tried a desperate SCV pool defense but did not manage to hold, meaning that Bunny would be the first player to advance today. The Zerg vs Zerg in the elimination match kicked off with some aggression. Dongregoo managed to kill Reiner's hatchery, but after only killing 3 drones in the main base, had to settle for somewhat of an even game. And just like in the first game versus Bunny, the Italian player showed that he is the absolute king when it comes to standard macro games, out multitasking DRG where possible and eventually taking a game-winning fight in the Roach Mirror. In the second game of the series, there was no trickery present and the foreign hope seemed to be doing just fine until he lost a bunch of links for free versus 2 banelings. DRG's follow-up Roach Link Bane attack was simply too powerful and Reiner did not have the tools available to deal with it, losing him his third hatchery and his ability to make a comeback into the game. In the final game of the series, DRG opened the Book of Cheese once more and picked a solid 12 pool as the starting build. Minimal losses for Reiner put him in a small lead, but that evened out when Reiner decided to go for the safe +1 carapace while DRG opted for the +1 range upgrade. The game abruptly ended when a maxed out fight for both players swinged heavily in DRG's favor due to the superior positioning and a higher Ravager count, leading to DRG winning the series 2-1 and the only foreign representation that was left getting knocked out of the GSL. That also meant that the decider match was to be a rematch between Dream and DRG. Dream switched up from the first series as he actually built a third command center in the first game of the series. A decision I am sure he regretted the moment the game started going sour, with run-bys dealing a little bit too much economic damage. DRG used the eco lead to hit with a powerful Viper timing and absolutely wipe Dream's defenses off the face of the earth and thus getting the first point on the board. In the second game, Dream attempted a proxy 2-rex but got spotted by an inquisitive drone and was forced to change plans. And just like in game number 1, the new plan involved a third base and a camping Terran to boot. DRG tried to break Dream's camping with a big Link Bane attack, but miserably failed, putting Dream in a bit of a lead. Subsequent attempts of breaking Dream also did not succeed, and the Busan Zerg had to give up in game 2 despite that great early game. In the final game of the day, we saw Dongray Goose double Evo into a delayed Mura opening catch some of Dream's drops off guard. This forced Dream into a defensive posture, while DRG managed to quickly saturate the neutral gold base. Mutalisk harass as well as Baneling Ling attacks made it difficult for Dream to get the setup he wanted to get into a comfortable late game. And when Dream finally went to try and take his 6th, DRG was in position to pounce and absolutely destroyed the Terran forces. The South Korean Terran player did try to stay in the game, but there was no point, as he was down about 100 supply and being severely outmined on top of that. The Terran tapped out and DRG advanced onto the round of 10, wrapping up Group B. Group C consisted of Maru, Gumiho, Classic and Zaun, with Classic and Maru starting off in the first match of the day. Classic started off great, getting a Phoenix opener versus a Widowmine drop opener and even catching the initial medevac move out. After the opener, however, it felt like Classic lost the plot a little bit in this matchup, deciding to get 4 gas, charge, a delayed Robo Bay and a Forge. On top of that, Classic also added 5 more gateways, which honestly are all great investments to make, but perhaps not at the same time, which is exactly what Classic found out the moment Maru made his way across the map with 2 medevacs, a bunch of bio, and about 25 SCVs. Maru's SCV pull worked like a charm and took game number 1 with ease. The second game opened up fairly similar to the first, with a mine drop versus a Phoenix opener. Classic, however, got caught out of position this time around and ended up losing a couple of probes as well as a bunch of mining time. Maru followed it up with a Marine Cyclone pushout while harassing with a lip, and quite honestly, Classic just fell apart. Losing workers, forgetting to rebuild workers, and overbuilding gate units. This led to such a poor position for Classic that when Maru decided to win the game a couple of minutes later, there really was nothing that Classic could do. After a disappointing first series, GSL fans around the world got disappointed in the second series again, when in game 1 between Gumiho and Zaun, a single Cloak Banshee won the game, as Zaun temporarily seemed to have forgotten about the existence of invisible units. Zaun did try to counterattack, but was so far behind that it never really stood a chance. The second game featured an unsuccessful Widowmine drop for Gumiho, which gave Zaun the freedom to probe up to infinity and beyond, or, well, at least he thought. Gumiho thought differently and went for a quick 2.5 base all-in timing. Here Zaun came to the sad realization that probes aren't actually that great in a straight-up fight, and thus ended up losing 2 Nexuses as well as a decent chunk of probes and a decent chunk of his army. The game lingered on for a bit more, but the poor Protoss never stood a chance, and Gumiho claimed his 2-0 victory. In the winners match we saw an exciting TVT. Or well, exciting, as close to exciting as you can get with a TVT. As Maru opened up with a proxy 2-Rex Reaper, but Gumiho defended it well and immediately went for a proxy starport. This starport, however, got spotted immediately too, and thus also didn't end up working. Gumiho instead decided to start building some Banshees from home and executed a powerful 1-1-1 timing while taking a 3rd base behind it all. Maru eventually managed to hold and the game somewhat evened out, as Gumiho kept trying to attack, not accidentally wanting to end up in a late game versus Maru, the absolute king of Terran versus Terran late game, but every single attack ended up getting thwarted. And when Maru finally dropped on top of Gumiho's tanks, he managed to take a lead, which Gumiho never recovered from, eventually leading to a Maru win. The second game saw Gumiho attempt a Raven Viking push, and rather than straight up defending like most Terrans would, Maru decided to go for a triple Raven run by, taking out a bunch of workers as well as taking out an eBay, which was in the process of upgrading. Eventually Maru cleans up the push and starts leveraging the fact that he has an upgrade lead in the game. When a seemingly innocuous drop attacks Gumiho's 3rd, Maru accidentally wins the game, as there is just one sieged up tank and his marines are way better upgraded. With that win, Maru advances out of the group in 1st place with a 4-0 map score. The 4th match of the day saw Classic go up against Zaun, and the latter immediately came out with a fiery build as he went for a proxy Stargate Oracle into a 3-gate Stalker all-in. Classic played a pretty loose defense with a lot of probes and some honestly questionable micro, but despite that still managed to take game number 1 with relative ease. The second game started well for Zaun, but quickly went sour when 2DT strolled into his base and denied a bunch of mining time, as well as killing a couple of workers. This allowed Classic to set up an attack that should have won the game right here, right then, but Zaun somehow, some way, used some dark magic and not only survived, but actually put himself ahead. However, with his second bout of Dark Magic, Classic managed to get map control despite being down in supply, and with slightly superior Disruptor Micro, as well as some good DT harass, blasted Zaun and won game number 2, getting himself into the decider match versus Gumiho. And in the decider match we saw an insane game number 1 that wholeheartedly deserved this week's Game of the Week award. Gumiho started out with a fast-paced Marine Cyclone move out, which was quickly followed up by some minor Banshee harass that didn't achieve too much. For a second it looked like Classic might even be capable of straight up winning the game in the counter-attack, but Gumiho eventually manages to stabilize and despite being behind, still is in a playable position. Both players went up to 3 bases and Classic was in the process of taking a 4th when he decided to move across the map to try and kill Gumiho. Gumiho realized what was coming and cleverly avoided the Toss army, opting for a base trade instead. A base trade in which Classic was way ahead in until he lost his prism with 4 High Templar in it by flying into a Widow Mine. This allowed Gumiho to continue pushing in with his main army while at the same time trying to hold Classic's attack by burrowing mines and rallying units to the top of his ramp. The game came to a painful conclusion for the Protoss player when Gumiho took out the final base with a slick drop play while simultaneously pushing Classic's main army out of his own main base, forcing Classic to tap out and taking map number 1. The second game was the opposite of the first, as it might be the worst game of the week. Classic opened up with a proxy Stargate and accidentally flew his second Oracle into a mine he had already spotted. This put him in a bad position in the game, as he had sacrificed quite some economy to try and get these Stargate units out quickly. The game got decided after that when Gumiho pushed across the map with a dozen Marines and a tank. Classic had no answer for it and GG'd out. Gumiho advanced in the round of 10 in the second place and Classic went home to lick his wounds. That wraps up the GSL segment for today, but as always we had 3 ESL Open Cups starting on the Sunday in Korea. Solar managed to win the first cup of the weekend by taking out Beyond in the finals, only dropping a single map in the series and thus winning 3-1. Over in Europe we had the unique situation of a PvP finals. MaxPax did manage to win it, as he usually does when it comes to PvP, although Skillers made it closer than most people would have expected with a 3-2 score in favor of the young Dane. MaxPax wasn't done yet for the day, as he decided to stay up to play the North American Cup as well, and play it he did, as he managed to snatch the second cup victory of the day by beating Gerald with a 3-0 score. Congratulations to MaxPax for winning his first ever double, and congratulations to Solar for winning in Korea. That brings us to this week's clip of the week, where we have a Protoss player showing Terrans how to properly Doom drop.
Look at this. This is something that our other Terrans wish they knew how to do. Okay, maybe...
Absolutely beautiful stuff there. Picture perfect Doom dropping. Alright, that leads us to the final question of the day, and that is, why does Canadian money look so much like Monopoly money? Let me tell you. It is relatively smooth because it is made out of polymer rather than paper, and polymer is slightly more durable, 2.5 times as durable as paper is. The colors are there to simplify transactions. For example, all $20 bills are green, so it's easy to spot everything in the wallet. On top of that, it also helps people who have some degree of color blindness. Put all of these things together and you get money, well, that looks like it got stolen from the guy with the top hat that's on the Monopoly game. Alright. That's going to be it for me today. Thanks all so much for watching this week's episode of StarCraft Today. If you did enjoy, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see all of you next time for a new video. Thank you, and bye-bye.